So something that I obsessed over quite a bit when I started building a new streaming setup was getting the cleanest audio possible. So when I was actually streaming for events, despite having a several $100 mixer and really expensive headset microphones and even, fancy microphones here, even with that crazy audio chain, at the end of the day, it was either just an output from the mixer into a 3.5 line in jack on the streaming PC. So what I really wanted to experiment with was getting proper audio interfaces to capture audio. And the way I was messing with my stream setup is I tried two different audio interfaces. So the EVO Audient 4, which is kind of like an entry level audio interface, and then the RME Babyface FS Pro. I hope I got that right. So this is more of a high-end audio interface. Now, for the purposes of this video, this is only going to be looking at the audio interfaces for doing like voiceover work for streaming or just, single audio capture. I know a lot of audio engineers and more professional people would look at the way I use this for a simple setup, especially with the RME, and be like, what are you doing? There's so much more features. So feel free to blow me up in the comments, but I just wanted to compare these two audio interfaces at very different price points, look at the features that they offer, look at the audio quality, of course, and help kind of inform you on what kind of budget should you set aside for your own audio interface. All right, so obviously the most important thing that we need to check out first is the audio quality. What do these sound like? What do they sound like for different mics? What are the options available on both of them? And if you look at the tech specs, both units are pretty similar. They're both 24-bit dynamic range, which means that you can actually clip these if you go high enough, but 24-bit is more than enough for most streaming recording applications. Of course, everyone loves 32-bit float, which means you can recover basically anything. And the sample rate's about the same for both, so 96 for the Audient and then 192 for the RME. Now, again, this doesn't really matter with streaming, especially if you're using this on a streaming setup. You're probably gaming. Most games are only going to go up to 48 kilohertz, so not a big deal. Both of them have really good microphone preamps. Now, of course, they both have phantom power, and the way we're going to test this, we're going to do a very straightforward test, something that's pretty much real world. So we're going to go ahead and just pop them into OBS, set the audio bitrate to 320, which is the highest possible in OBS by default, and really the highest possible that you can output to, say, Twitch at these days. And we're just going to listen to both of them, see how they sound. There's no EQ or any extra effects added. We're going to test it with two mics. One of them is the RE20. It's the electro voice mic. It's a very common, popular podcasting mic. And the other one is going to be the Sheps CMC641, a really high-end super cardioid mic. It's also used a lot on voiceover because, again, like I said, we're really focused on voiceover for streaming content or YouTube content. And let's just see how both of them sound. All right, this is the CMC616, the Sheps. It's going into the RME Babyface here. Here's the phrase. The singing rose was never without a troublesome fate. For what is a squeaker if it never has a mate? Okay, this is testing the Sheps microphone, the CMC641. This is on the EVO Audient 4 using the Smart Gain feature. Let's read the phrase. The singing rose was never without a troublesome fate. For what is a squeaker if it never has a mate? So this is the dynamic microphone, the RE20, going into the RME. And here is the phrase. The singing rose was never without a troublesome fate. For what is a squeaker if it never has a mate? All right, now we are testing the RE20 dynamic microphone. Got the AC on in the back. Testing it in the EVO Audient 4 with the Smart Gain feature. No other changes to levels or anything else. Let's read the phrase. The singing rose was never without a troublesome fate. For what is a squeaker if it never has its mate? Gear symbol. That's the end of the test. All right, so after that test, let me know which one you think sounded better, if you could hear a difference at all. Did they sound the same? Let me know in the comments. I think this is probably the most important part of this whole comparison. All right, so next we're going to take a look at the inputs and outputs on each device. Now the cool thing is they both use USB-C and USB-A, so it can work with a lot of modern devices and laptops and whatnot. Now with the EVO Audient 4, the inputs are two microphone inputs and then a direct line input. Now the direct line input will take over one of the microphone inputs if you use it. You also have a headphone output and a speaker output. And I think the really handy feature is that you actually have this loopback output. So basically in your streaming software, you can select the loopback as your system sound or playback device. So that way you can mix your computer sounds separately from your microphone input sounds. You can also use the monitor mix to basically listen to the audio between what your system or your PC playback is and what your microphone volume is. So some people like to hear their mics when they're streaming to kind of like be able to control their voice. And, you know, of course you want to be able to hear your gameplay if this is going to be your main playback device. So the thing is with the RME is that of course it has a lot more outputs because it's a higher end device. Now, one of the really cool ones is it actually has a balanced XLR output. So this is one of the main reasons why I picked this up, because I have a headphone amplifier that takes in XLR inputs and I wanted to make sure I had the best, most balanced signal chain. So hook those up, super simple. Now, I know this is designed basically for studio monitors, so I ended up getting studio monitors, so it was easy to just use a simple Y cable to split that out between the amplifier and the speakers. Work perfectly. There's even a switch on the bottom to, you know, boost the signal that goes out of this. Then of course you have the standard headphone out. This pretty much drives any headphone that you want to connect to it. It has a really good DAC chip or digital to analog audio converter. Probably butchered that acronym. So it has really good outputs, but the thing is that it comes with the Total Mix software. And with the EVO 4, whatever you output is the same between all outputs. So if you only output your microphone, that's throughout all the outputs. If you only output the system playback sound, you're probably gonna want to mix of both, but you can't control what goes out of which output. Whereas on the RME, you know, you have the main output 1 and 2 that's connected to my headphones, and you have a sub output, you know, this is like the headphone output like 3 and 4, and you can decide what goes to each channel. So the reason this is useful is because I have a 2 PC setup. So on the PC, I have multiple inputs, and basically to one input, I send my microphone. That way I have a microphone only signal and I can play effects and stuff like this, EQ and whatnot. And then I have a signal going out into the capture card of my playback audio. So, you know, my gameplay sound and stuff like that. And I do some software audio routing in the PC, but basically the game sound goes one way, the microphone sound goes its own, and I can kind of, you know, tweak things as I like. So I really like being able to have a software mixer built into my audio interface. Now, both of these devices actually have a couple special killer features on them. So in RMEs, and I think this is probably one of the most amazing features, is it has a smart gain feature. So basically you press this button and then you press your input, and then as long as you have your mic connected or whatever source connected, you talk into it, and after a period of time, it'll determine what the proper gain is. Now, to any experienced professional, this probably doesn't matter. They know what proper level should be. But if you're someone, especially with voice, if you're just starting out, you probably have like no idea what you should be setting your levels to and what's the proper levels. You might just be peaking or clipping it or setting it too low and then trying to boost it, and it sounds all muddy. So this is really good for basically just setting it and forgetting it. You know it's good. Honestly, even after you set the smart gain levels, I don't think you're quite done. I think you should still kind of go into your streaming software and, you know, maybe do a little bit more EQ, do some compression, throw on a limiter, and then, you know, tweak it a bit more. That usually does it pretty well. XSplit's really great for this if you want to just do it very simply because it's kind of just built into the microphone input. You know, give it a bit more tweaks, and it's not gonna solve your problems if you have bad like microphone technique. You know, place the microphone in the right place. Don't send it all the way across the room or too far away, you know. But it helps something that I think a lot of people maybe don't know what to do right at the beginning. Now on the RME end, so it has this whole software mixer, and built into the software mixer, and this is also one of the reasons why I originally really wanted this, is that it has an EQ built in, it has effects built in, so you can kind of do an EQ to tweak your voice, you know, raise that bass a little bit, or, you know, cut the highs or raise the mids. So I thought this was really cool because it has built-in stuff and you can basically get a good sound of it to kind of do like a one and done setup. Now I started using VST plugins, and this really kind of removes the benefit of that, but aside from that, just the digital mixer itself is just so powerful in the routing you can do. I might not ever really explore all the ways that I can use it because I have so few inputs, but Just having something that's kind of built into one, you don't need to worry about buying VSTs or learning how to use those or dealing with latency and stuff. It's really easy and simple to set up. The mixer has a bit of a learning curve, but if you know the general principles of how a mixer should work, then you'll get on it pretty quickly. So I touched upon this a bit earlier, but I'd be remiss not to say that, okay, what was the main reason for me purchasing the RME if the EVO 4 basically takes care of most of my needs? Well, I'm a big headphones nerd, or I had a big headphones kick, so I was really interested in getting the most pristine quality audio, not just for mixing and recording, but also just for listening to music or watching streams, watching movies, being able to power these different headsets and stuff like this. Like I have the Sennheiser 800S, and that's kind of picky with what it wants. So the DAC chip in the RME is really good. And the one in the EVO Audient 4, I don't really know what it is, but you still have to hook it up to an amp, and there's not balanced outputs and stuff like that. So the balanced outputs and all the audiophile nerd stuff that I'm into is in the RME. That's why it made the right choice, or it made the most sense to me. Actually, the one that I really wanted to pick up besides this was I think it's called the Motu M4, because that also had the routing and stuff like that, and it had a really good chip in it, and it was a sick price. I think it's like $300, maybe less, but that was sold out everywhere thanks to the pandemic, So I wouldn't say this is the next best choice. It was just the thing that was available. So if that's something that's important to you, is really high quality audio, hi-fi audio as they say, then definitely the RME is the better choice. So what audio interface is the best choice for streamers? Well, I would say for about 99.8.9% of streamers, the EVO Audient 4 is the best choice. Aside from just the huge price difference, you should never spend more than $200-$300 on an audio interface, especially for streaming. But just the power of the smart gain feature, because I think it's really important that streaming is something that's not really gate kept, that it's something that everyone can do. Streaming is so easy to get started with these days. Before, you used to have to know bit rate and audio interfaces and mixers and all this stuff just to get started. So having devices like the EVO 4, which takes care of a big problem that most people have trouble learning and may dissuade them from continuing to stream, which is, how do I get my audio levels right? And it takes care of that for you. That is such a powerful feature, and that's why by far it's the best choice for streamers. Do you really need it if you're just streaming with your headset and it's just a gaming headset? No, you don't. If you're planning to get a high-end microphone like the Shure SM7B or the RE20, a microphone like that, pairing it with an interface like the EVO Audient 4 is a great choice. Now, if you're just using USB mics or the Shure MV7 or something like that, you don't need it. You don't need an audio interface. And honestly, the audio quality differences, unless you're using really high-end headphones, doesn't matter. So the EVO Audient 4, purely the best choice. Now, if you're someone that just loves to go nuts and have nice things, then yeah, the RME is great. It's amazing, especially if you're a musician. It's built for musicians. It's built to be kind of like the centerpiece of, an audio engineers or a studio or something like that. It looks really nice. It's aesthetically pleasing. The EVO 4 is a bit plastically, a bit cheap, but it's very cool in its minimalist way. But I really think that the RME looks pretty sleek. It's a really small footprint, sits on your desk. That was a really important thing too. I didn't want to go the mixer route because the mixers are big and, you lose so much desk space. So, end of story. EVO 4 is a great choice. And I think actually there's the ID4, which is its bigger brother, which is a slightly more expensive, but it's a bit more solid. And I think the mic preamps are a bit better, but that's what I would say. But, let me know in the comments. Let me know, have you ever used an audio interface? Are you planning to use an audio interface, or do you prefer using mixers? And what kind of microphones are you using on your stream? What did you start with, or what are you hoping to graduate to? Let me know in the comments. Give a like and share this video if it was helpful or gave you some insight into how you pick audio interfaces and what features are important. And make sure to subscribe for more videos about streaming tech and things going on. Thanks again for watching. Catch you on the next one.